Okay, it's Mike and Mitzi, and this is Wave Social Podcast, powered by Arcade Studios. It's a show for marketers, creators, and brand builders who want to make waves online.
We sit down with the experts and tastemakers behind today's most up-and-coming brands. And today on the show, we have Gary Williams, co-founder of Creative Theory.
It's going to be good, but first, we want to show you some more merch.
Let's do it.
So today, we're showing off some stickers. Last season, the stickers were one of the popular items. Simple but deadly. If you got a water bottle, you likely got some stickers too. So you can re-up this season. We still have water bottles left from last season if you want to grab one of those ahead of summertime.
And these are so cute. They're with like our new color scheme for the season. There's due end of day, there's me time, inbox at zero, little bathtub. So you can get these stickers for your water bottles if you already have a Waves water bottle, or you can put them on your laptop, on your notebook.
We got some nice negative space on this season's candle, so if you want an extra spot to consider. Also, if you're an elder millennial like me, you might recognize some wingdings on here.
Oh God.
Gen Z likely won't understand what wingdings are, but you're welcome. Thank me later.
A lot of people don't understand what wingdings are. Like, it's a very niche, like, subject.
I mean, for anyone that was in computer class in our era, you know, like if you had to go to the bathroom or something and you had drafted an essay or a note to your crush, you could just change it to wingdings and then no one would be able to read it while you were gone.
I've never done that and would never be interested in doing that.
I need some help, so if anyone out there listening, watching, if you've used wingdings or know what they are, please let us know so that I can win this argument.
I really like inbox at zero. That's my favorite sticker.
I think my favorite would be me time.
Cute.
These days I'm just less extroverted than I used to be, so a little bit of me time goes a long way. Ain't that true?
Anyways, let's talk about Gary.
Gary's the man.
Such a good episode. I really love talking to Gary because Creative Theory is an agency that we look up to a lot. They have built such a cool agency out of their values for diversity and telling stories. So they've seen a lot of success, won a few awards in the industry, and we just have a lot of respect for them.
Yeah, they've worked with some big players like Google, Nike, BMW. And it's not just your typical agency work. It's really about like making the most or like showing up the right way in pivotal culture moments.
And helping brands do that.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a flex before we jumped in the call. He's like, oh, sorry, I'm late. I had a rep one of their clients from Meta drop by to film a video. And I'm like, wow, like that's one of their clients. So they're doing big things.
Yeah, and if you are new to the show, back in season 2, episode 2, we sat down with Gary's partner, Tamon, and chatted about a lot of other stuff. So maybe you want to start with that one and then come back to this one. Maybe that one, you can treat it as a sequel. Either way, you should hit up both because they both have a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, they're doing really cool stuff. So excited to share this one.
Yeah, let's cue up Gary.
Let's go.
Gary, welcome to Wave Social. We're excited to have you, man. First off, we just want to know what the last few months have been like for you. What's life been looking like?
Well, first, thank you. Thank you all for having me. This is like super dope. I'm super excited about this conversation. The last few months, Q4, we have a saying here where we say Q4 is Q4ing. And pretty much what that means is like it's full on like sprint until holiday break, right? So there's projects that, you know, are tailing off that we're wrapping up. And then there's like projects that come in literally at the tail end of the year. And it's like, we have to churn this work out and literally for, you know, sometimes 3 weeks. But that being said, it's been really cool. It's been really busy. But we're used to this. Every Q4 is like literally a sprint to the finish line. We go on break pretty much December. We take the month off as an agency and try to like reset, recalibrate, and get ready for the new year, Q1. And so we're like racing towards that finish line. Everybody's, you know, finishing up projects and trying to get done before December so we can really go on, take a break, right? But we've grown in the last 2 years, crazy growth. At the top of the pandemic, we had 5 team members. we are now at 25 team members. It's dope, but scary as well, because it's like the growth is like, whoa, like, it's just a lot. But we've managed to hire some really great people, which makes a difference. I think one of the things we try to do here is like keep that culture and kind of close-knit, intimate family vibes. And so when you grow that fast, it's not hard, but you really have to be careful on, not hiring just to hire, right? And make sure you're hiring folks that fit kind of the system and fit the culture and, will add value to not just the work, but to the atmosphere and to the energy and to the environment, right? And so, that's something that we try to stay cognizant of, but at the same time, it's like we need bodies, like we need people to come in and be able to do this work, so we can scale responsibly and smart, right? So last few months have been crazy, but it's all part of the course. It's kind of what we're used to now, but it doesn't take away from the hustle and the bustle and just the somewhat stress of just ending the year.
Yeah. So do you do most of the hiring, like you and Tamon?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We actually just brought on someone full-time for our HR, which we had folks, popping in and out and outsourcing things here and there, and Tamon and I were doing most of the hiring. But now we have a dedicated HR team who is helping us in this next wave, because top of the year we'll probably hire Q1, we're looking to hire 10 more folks.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
That's a lot.
So we're just at the point now where scaling efficiently is about putting the right people in the right place, right? And Tamon and I are in a position now where we can't necessarily be in the weeds of everything, right? We can't be doing admin stuff as well as trying to bring in new business and, making sure client relations and accounts are stable and in good standing. So just trying to be smart, in how we scale and taking a bit of that administrative work off our plate so we can focus on bringing in new business and assuring that our accounts are taken care of.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like that's an exciting milestone in your business. Even though maybe it's a little tough to like actually pull yourself out of that space, like being in the trenches or being in the weeds, like you said. We've grown quite a bit too, not to the extent that you have, but we were about 4 or 5 people when the pandemic hit, and now we're around 15. And we're still doing the hiring.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but we would love it's exhausting.
Yeah, exactly.
It's exhausting to do the hiring and still do the work and like have a great output, So.
Yes.
And
exactly.
the client services and getting new business and all of that. I've always wondered, like, what is the stage where we start thinking about hiring someone in HR? Like, how big do you have to be for that to even like be a role that keeps someone busy? But sounds like 25 is the sweet spot.
No, honestly, 25 is a sweet spot for us. I think we probably could have done it a little earlier. But, when you're early in the game and you're trying to scale efficiently, scale smart, you have to make calculated risks, especially when you talk about cash flow and, you don't want to hire someone and, not have the money to pay them pretty much, right? So there's a little bit of like calculation you have to do and, calculated risk you have to take. Is like, is this the right time? And it's like, when is the right time? You don't really know. It's just kind of okay, it's just too much for me and Tamon to do at the moment. So it's almost like it forces your hand in a bit to make that decision. But I think there's a lot of factors that go into making money decisions or hiring decisions around the business, right? And finances is a major part of that, right? Do we have the finances to bring on someone of this caliber and sustain that role and sustain our current roles, right? So there's a little bit of that, but I think we were at the point, again, to your point, is like, all right, it's getting a little crazy. Like, we have 25 folks and like things were starting to lag as far as like contracts and paperwork getting to these folks. So it's like, okay, this is not good business now. Now, we want to make sure our paperwork and things are done and those things are locked in and solidified before we like start this working relationship with team members. So,
Totally.
25 was our sweet spot, but if you could do it earlier, I would say do it.
All right, we'll have to have a straight talk about that later, because that would be a dream for me. I want to ask you about culture. Like you mentioned that you've been able to preserve like a really tight knit culture, and like we're fans of your culture from what we can see on social media. So can you talk to us about how you've been able to create that and protect that and preserve that? Like, how do you make sure that the culture that you've built and that you've kind of like created with Tamon from the beginning is sustained as you've scaled your team and grew and added new people and all that good stuff?
Great question again. I think, a lot of it stems from leadership, right? Tamon and I kind of set the standard, set the bar by not just kind of what our company mantra and like the things we live by, but also, the things we do and how we run the company and, the things we value as a company, right? And so what we try to do is, one, make that evident, very clear when we're bringing folks on about what we expect from our folks, right? And how we envision the culture and how we see the company as it is today, and then how we see it potentially in the future, right? And so that's one way, just very clear kind of, this is what Creative Theory was built for and built around, and which is like a very community-driven agency that is here to represent the underrepresented, that's here to champion, the underrepresented and amplify those voices, right? And so I think everybody who wants to work here and that we reach out to understands the mission on like a very deep level, right? And I think usually those passions are aligned. So we try to bring people who are aligned with that passion as well, right? Who have a heart for championing these underrepresented communities, who have a heart for just making sure that voices are heard and that, we're not only doing cool work, but we're doing impactful work. So a lot of it stems from us. We take on that responsibility as kind of leading the charge. But then again, it's really about hiring not like-minded folks, but folks who kind of have the same vision and mission for themselves personally, right? And making sure that those things align. Like we definitely don't want to bring in people here who have who aren't aligned with the mission of Creative Theory Agency. So there's that. I think as we scale, that's going to be harder to maintain, right? We've been successful thus far, but different personalities, and as the more people you add, the harder it is to kind of foster that environment and keep that close knit kind of family style. So we understand that that's going to be a challenge as we grow. I think right now it's in a good space. And, the vibes are good, and we'll try to continue to keep those same vibes. But, we also don't want to be a monolith, right? We don't want to bring people in here who have same perspectives, same opinions on everything, and then it gets boring and it's not adding to the work, right? We need different perspectives. We need different, kind of approaches and creative to the work, so we can always stay innovative and make sure that, we're pushing ourselves and challenging ourselves in the work. So, again, long story short, Tamon and I are the ones who have to kind of lead in how and what we value, our mission, and making sure that, we're hiring folks that are in line with that, but also that we're doing work that aligns with our mission and that we're not stepping outside of that, right?
Yeah.
And chasing the dollar. And that's one thing we've never done, and we've kind of made it a mission not to do, is chase money. If the work doesn't align with our mission, we're not taking the work. And I think our team members really respect that from us. So there's that.
What's the mission?
Well, the mission is to always community first. We're a community first. We don't have like a mantra. I guess our mantra would be real people, real stories, real moments. But our mission is always community first. And when I say community, I mean like our direct community here in DC, but then also our broader community as far as Black and brown folks. And so, if the work is not amplifying, celebrating, supporting, those communities or underrepresented communities. It goes outside of black and brown first, because that's who we are. But LGBTQIA, folks with disabilities, any of these indigenous folks, any of the underrepresented groups, we are about supporting them, championing them, putting them in spaces where their voices are typically not heard or typically not valued. How can we make these spaces better for us and people like us? And so that's the mission. That's where we kind of measure things up to when work comes in. Does it support this in any way, shape, or form? Is it not only cool work, is it impactful work? Right. And so
that's good.
That's it.
You talked a few times already about scaling, and but you also mentioned like 25 feels like a bit of a sweet spot. Mm-hmm. And it's like tight knit, and you want to be able to maintain that feeling, and also that like not necessarily creative control, but that like DNA that you started with. So like, why do you want to still keep growing? Like, why not just stay at like 25 or 30 people?
I think the work that we envision ourselves doing, we're doing it now. But I think we would want to do it on a larger scale, right? And not crazy. We're not trying to be Wyden and Kennedy. We're not trying to be like this massive agency. I think when Tamon and I talk, we're talking around like 75, maybe. That's probably like our sweet spot, right? But I think we're doing great work now. But I think there's so much more we can be doing if we had a larger team, right? And so it's not necessarily about getting more work. It's about being more effective and efficient on current work, but then also getting more work and being able to service our clients on a larger scale and frankly more efficiently, right? We're doing a good job now, but I think we're a little stretched, and we want one thing, we don't want our teams to feel overburdened or stressed, when they're working. We want them to feel fully supported. So we want to build out our teams in a way where folks feel like they can do their job and not have to do two other things as well, right? So it's like, if you are a creative, producer, we want you to focus on creatively producing and not having to do account management and creative producing. And, it's a little bit of that, sure. A lot of cross intersection roles right now, which people love because they get to like grow and, figure out different things that they can do. But at the same time, it's like, you would probably be way more efficient if you could just focus on what you do, and you'd probably be way more effective and way more creative if like you didn't have to think about account management and creative strategy and social to some degree, right? So That's kind of where we're at now.
That's a good answer. I think I asked that selfishly too, because we're kind of asking ourselves those questions. We're at that 15 kind of like kind of breaking into that medium-sized space, but also like, do we want to get bigger even?
Yeah, what does that even look like for work that's bigger,
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of like your specialty, like you're talking about your team members and being able to just really focus on what they do. We know you're a photographer by trade.
Yeah.
Did you ever imagine that you'd be the chief creative officer at an agency that you started, or what did it look like when you got into it in the first place?
My journey has been a bit wild. So, I started off obviously as a photographer, went to school for it, film and photography and graphic design. I got out of school and ended up getting a job as mainly a graphic designer, but there was a little bit of photo and video involved, but nothing crazy, nothing creative, quite boring. It was for a government contractor. But during that time, I really dove into my photography and like content creation on the side. I was moonlighting, working on the weekends, taking vacations to do jobs, like, that whole hustle. But during that time, those 7 years, I really like built my portfolio up, made some really good connections and built some really good relationships with some great brands. So by the time they laid me off after 7 years, I was able to kind of like make a decision not to go back to a 9-to-5 and really bet on myself and my talents and the relationships that I had built. So I did that, and I was extremely successful that first year out. And I was like, I'm never going back to my 9 to 5 if I don't have to. And so within that first year, I actually met Tamon, who was completing his MBA here in the district, but also had just a really natural knack for photography, and was using that to meet new people in the city because he was from Canada and he had just come over here from Canada. So, but just obviously we hit it off, and just began meeting in Starbucks and talking about life and, where we saw ourselves, and then business and how we saw business, and how what we were doing separately could potentially complement each other, and then we started doing little projects here and there. It was good. Like, the relationship was well, like what he brought to the table as far as business acumen and just, his marketing mind and his business mind with my creative production and experience. It's like a perfect match. And so we just decided to start Creative Theory Agency. Again, not with a crazy structure or like plan in mind. It was like, we know what we can do together. We know what we want to do somewhat. We know what we're good at separately, but we know we could be great at together, and we wanted to build something bigger than ourselves. That was one thing we always said when we met. It's like, how do we build something larger than ourselves? We both understood, like, if we were going to stay on our own, and I was just going to be this content creator and he was going to be this photographer, this marketing background, that scaling had a limit pretty much, right? But also we knew so many amazing creators in the city that were looking for opportunities that we were getting with these major brands. It was like, we need to bring our community to this table. Like, we need to build a table where we can bring our community together and we can execute on a lot of this work. So that's what we did. Did I ever think I would be co-founder, CFO of an award-winning agency? No, I did not. But here I am. And, I try not to box myself in when it comes to imagining things for myself or setting goals for myself. And I think being open to just the journey has led me to where I am today, where we are today, right? Not necessarily saying, I don't have an MBA. I went to 5 years of just undergrad. And so imposter syndrome sometimes creeps in, like, are you really supposed to be here? But then I'm reminded that, I'm here for a reason. We're doing great work, and part of our success, or largely part of our success, is the folks that we've surrounded ourselves with, our team members. And so it's good. It's been good. But long story short, again, no, I did not envision myself here, but here I am.
Yeah, here you are.
Awesome. You mentioned that you've gotten awards. We were really excited to see that Creative Theory won Small Agency of the Year by Ad Age, which is, we're in the agency space. So that was really cool to watch you guys get that. Can you give any advice to other people who are listening? I know we got a lot of marketers who listen to us and people who work at agencies. There's lots of people who aspire to create award-winning work, and maybe they don't have, the Googles or the Metas as clients, but can you give us any advice for how they can create meaningful work that, is worthy of recognition and attention and awards?
Great question. I'm always hesitant when I give advice because everybody's journey is different, right? And I try not to put my journey on other folks' journey. But what I would say is set a mission. Like, your why is big, right? And our why, again, real people, real stories, real moments, is kind of where we started, what we grounded this in. And we try our best to maintain that and stand in that, right? So what I would tell folks is figure out your why. Why are you doing this? Make that clear to yourself, and then be able to articulate that to others and stand in that, right? And make sure everything that you do lines up to your mission. At the end of the day, if you are aligned to your mission, the work and everything that comes with that will pretty much align itself, right? And so we started out very small. Me and Tamon grew to 5, and then grew to now 25. But I think that growth was made possible because we understood what we wanted to do. Our mission stayed, was our focus. We measured everything up to that. And that's kind of what got us here. You know, these big brands, these big companies, there's been a huge emphasis on DEI. As you all know, in the last 2 years, the uptick has been crazy. And we can point to social issues and things and happenings that have probably sparked a bit of that uptick. We were, I want to say, ahead of the game when we started Creative Theory Agency in 2015 and really trying to, you know, do this work that directly affected, you know, marginalized communities. And so, again, with that focus and our mission and then timing, you know, a little bit of luck, there's a lot of factors. But one thing for sure that you have to be rooted in is a mission and your why. And I think if you can stand on that and use that as your North Star, use that as your anchor, you know, that will make way for opportunity. And that will make way for, you know, the work to grow. But it takes time. I know it's been almost 6 years for us in business, and that's quick to how we scaled. Again, it's not probably ideal. And so again, I don't like put my journey on other people's journey because sometimes it can take longer than that, right? And it's hard to decipher, like, when do I hire people? You know, when do I bring on extra help? All these things we had to learn as we were going. We didn't have any capital. Nobody invested in us. There was nobody there, like, kind of holding our hand through this process. We really had to figure it out. And I think we're still, even 6 years in, we're still figuring it out to a certain extent, right? You have to be open too, right? You can't set stringent boundaries around, you know, your work. I think there were a lot of projects that Tamon and I took that we were like, this is not necessarily the work we envisioned doing, but it's work we can do, you know, and it's work that lined up to our mission. And folks trusted us to do the work, right? They were coming to us to say, hey, we would love for you all to do this work. So a lot of it is like staying open to opportunities, staying open to change, because things flux all the time.
Right.
And it can be easy for us to look at change as almost like denial, or this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. But at the end of the day, change is just a challenge. And, you know, you got to be solution oriented, right? And so I hope that I'm long-winded, but, you know, I don't have like an exact science,
Totally.
you know, to give folks. I guess the main things would be stay true to your mission, figure out your why, stay open to possibilities and opportunities, and then do the work, right? You know, make sure you're doing quality work at every stage, right? Whether it's 2 people, whether it's 10 people, whether it's 25, make sure you're doing quality work, because that ultimately, that work is going to get you new work, right? That
Totally.
your old work is marketing for your new work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's good advice. Speaking of work, what is the work that you're most proud of?
Wow. I'm proud of all of our work. I think in the last, probably since we've been an agency, my most proud work is the Google Black-owned business attribute, which launched in the midst of the pandemic. What is it, about to go on 2022? So 2020, Google came to us and asked us to create a Black-owned business badge that could be searchable on search and maps throughout Google globally, right? So this would be the indicator of Black-owned business on Google search and Google Maps. And so, I mean, you talk about like this, it was huge, like for our small agency to literally, we built it from scratch. Like they had no guidance. They were like, we just want your ideas. We want you to build this attribute, and we'll implement it into Google globally. So now if you go on Google and search Black-owned business, if you go on Maps, you'll see our little icon show up for all the Black-owned businesses. They just did a commercial with the attribute for Black Friday. So it's still, to this day, it's my favorite because it involved strategy and like research and then design as well. So both sides of the agency got to really dive in on this project, and it's like, it's Google and it's global, and it's something that'll never go away. It's something that I can tell my kids, like, Daddy helped build this.
Yeah. And it's true to your mission. Like,
and it's true to our mission. Like, exactly.
Come on, man. That's awesome. I really want to know about the gift shop. What inspired you? I feel like I can answer the question myself, but I want to hear you say it. What inspired you to do it, and what's it all about? Like, what does it look like now compared to when it was an idea in your head, and where's it going?
Yeah, great question. We had this idea, crazy enough, we had this idea probably 2 years into starting Creative Theory, right? But kind of shelved it just because we were trying to do other things. And then the pandemic happened. And we know, Black and brown businesses were being affected at a higher rate than, other businesses and creatives as well. There was just, from death to businesses going out of business, we were disproportionately affected. And so in the midst of that, this idea came back. How can we, again, staying true to our mission, how can we amplify and support Black-owned businesses in this moment? And Gift Shop was it. And just so happens we had a great relationship with our landlord, and there was a space open. We needed bigger office space, and it was the perfect storm, honestly. So our office is in the back of Gift Shop, and Gift Shop is at the front of the store. So you walk in, and it's Gift Shop. Then there's Creative Theory is in the back of the Gift Shop. But it all is all rooted in our mission and trying to combat the effects of COVID during the pandemic and help our community, our direct community here in DC. And so we brought in, we opened Gift Shop. There's artists here, there's makers here. You can get everything from t-shirts to candles to incense to glassware to pottery to art to lighters to, there's just a plethora of amazing Black and brown created art and goods here, and it's done extremely well. So that was Gift Shop, literally the manifestation of our mission.
That's so cool. And I think it's interesting that you shelved it. Like, obviously COVID played a factor, but I think it's important for people to know, like, you don't have to iterate or like execute on an idea right away. Sometimes it needs a little bit of time to percolate or to just like for the opportunity to present itself, and then you can jump on it. How did you know the time was now? Like, aside from the space being available with your landlord, were there other factors that said like, hey, it's time to do this today?
There was a lot of factors. Space was one of them. I think the pandemic was the main one. Literally, it was a direct response to friends we knew who were missing out on opportunities, who had to shut down, or who needed a space, or who never had a brick and mortar presence or experience for their products, right? A lot of times it's online only, and if you don't know, you don't know. And so this space being in a very well off area in DC, and the demographic being different from Black and brown folks, it was like, we can introduce our community to a whole new audience and a whole new experience for them. And that was Gift Shop. Literally, it was a direct response to how we can support our community during the pandemic.
That's so cool. I feel like it's even cooler that it is in the same building as your office. Like,
that's Mike's dream, actually.
Yeah, ever since I was like 19 or 21, like in university, thinking about starting my own business, I was always like, man, it would be so tight to have the agency side of things, but also that like retail component for events and like all that other stuff. So you're living my dream right now, man.
Listen, man, it's really cool, and I think your dream can come true too.
Oh yeah.
We didn't. Again, this is an idea we had and didn't necessarily know when it would happen. We shelved it, but the opportunity presented itself. And like you said, you know, it's one thing, you know, you don't always have to execute on everything right when you think about it. Like, things need to take time, and the right time will present itself, and you'll know, like, okay, this is it.
Who's more of the risk taker between you and Tamon? Like, who's got the foot on the gas pedal, and who's got it on the brake?
Tamon for sure. So we're risk takers in different ways. Like,
okay.
But I would say Tamon is, when it comes to like taking risks, he's the one who's ready to jump. I'm the more like, okay, I'm with you, but let's
sleep on it.
Think about it again. Yeah, let's sleep on it, right? For instance, we had a crazy idea of, do you all know StoryCorps?
No.
So it's like a NPR adjacent brand that has this like this hub, this mobile hub where they go around and collect stories. So we wanted to do that for our community. And so one day Tamana and I were like, we should just buy an RV and just convert it into this podcasting hub and then collect stories from our community, right? And so literally he was like, he wanted to do it that day. Like, he was on Facebook. We're buying this RV, Facebook Marketplace. We're buying this RV. Sent me several and was like, which one? And I'm like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's go look at some. And so eventually he listened. We looked on Facebook. We went to see some with some of the other team members, and then finally pulled the trigger on one. But that was like an impulsive thing where it was like, yes, let's do it. Great idea. But he was ready to like just go right there. So he's a risk taker. I think we're both risk takers. I think we got here by taking risks, and I think we'll continue to take risks. You just got to be a little bit more calculated. But there's always room. Like, there's different kind of risks, right? There's like risks that could take your business out of business. And then there's risks like, we can afford a little bit of risk on this one, right? So there's levels to risk.
Certainly.
Yeah, I love that you, with the gift shop, like, you went analog and like created a storefront when the whole world went digital. And I want to talk about like your physical space and your physical space specifically in DC. I also love DC. I interned there in 2008, so it's a great city.
Okay.
Amazing place. I think it's my favorite city in America, and one day hopefully I'll take my...
She interned there for the 2008 election when Obama got elected.
Oh, yeah, that had to be amazing. That was a special time.
It really was. Time. Yeah, it was really cool. I want to talk to you because I've heard that you've mentioned in interviews past that people have asked you if you'd like locate to a New York or an LA, but you've really planted yourself in DC, and I know community is so important to you. And COVID has allowed us to kind of like have clients all over. So can you speak to a little bit about why you've chosen to stay where you are? And if you have any advice for people who are looking to close clients who kind of live anywhere. For us, that's really relatable because we're in Calgary, Alberta, which is a very kind of obscure city, but we're able to work with clients all over. And most of our clients actually aren't in Calgary. So I wanted to know like what your perspective on that was.
Yeah. You know, when you think about creative agencies, creative in general, most people don't think of DC. Right, it's a very suit and tie, political led, policy driven space and environment, and that's just the nature of it. The White House is here. I mean, the country is run from here, so you have that government sector which DC is known for, but many people don't understand or know DC has a very robust creative community, but cities like New York, cities like LA, Chicago, Philadelphia, they get that tag of being the creative cities, right? And having the creative industries. And so part of us rooting here is trying to put DC on the map and really investing in our community, our creative community here. Because a lot of times I know plenty of folks who started a creative career here, but felt like they had to move to New York, move to LA to advance their career, their creative career, right? But what we wanted to do is say, no, you can have that New York that LA creative career here in DC at Creative Theory Agency, right? And so we definitely wanted to stay rooted in home and really, again, staying true to our mission. How do we help our community here in DC? We wouldn't really be helping our community if we moved out of here and plop down in New York or plop down in LA, right? Yes, we could bring people from DC to move to New York and LA and we'll work as an agency together. But at the same time, it's like, no, we don't want to do that. We want to stay here. We want to be close to our community. And we want to be able to hire from our community, within our community. Obviously, we're not always going to hire directly from DC, but there's value in being rooted here for those folks who are in DC, right? And so that's one reason that we decided to stay here in DC. And to your second part of the question, it's 2022. If the pandemic showed us anything, you don't have to be anywhere. You can be anywhere and work anywhere, right? This virtual thing has taken off with all kinds of video conferencing now. You really don't need to be in an office. I think for us, office culture is big, just for energy and creative juices. Like, we don't ever want to lose office culture. We'll probably go back to 3 days a week tops in the new year, or after the pandemic is over. But at the same time, we learned in the pandemic that you can be efficient, sometimes even more efficient, working kind of siloed in your own spaces. So we have folks all over LA, Louisiana, New York, DC, Chicago. So, there's no need for everyone to be at a central space working together 5 days a week anymore. I think the traditional way of working is long gone, and will be reinvented as we move on into these next probably 10 years. And you see that just, I think all the major tech companies are rethinking, the work and as we see it today. So I think it'll be a lot different from now on.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's cool, man. It's cool to see a team like yours that's doing such meaningful work, really just believe in where they're at and put their roots down deep and commit to it. And I think we've talked about this a little bit too, about how like social, especially with how the algorithms are, it serves us the same kind of content over and over again. And we just see the same stuff all the time. And even just by doing something in a different location, that makes a big difference. Doing it in a different location, but also with different people from that location, rather than just the same New York and LA stuff all the time. We always like to ask our guests, what's one piece of advice that you've gotten in your life that has stuck with you and made a difference? Like, I don't know if it, for some people it's their pops, their dad, their grandpa. It could be just some random person on the street in this like serendipitous moment. But is there anything that's stuck with you that you want to pass on to our listeners?
Yeah. So there was this was way back before my creative career actually took off. This was when I was trying to get my career started. I was just out of college and, moonlighting and I was looking at folks like Joshua Kissy, looking at folks like Marcus Troy as like, those were the bars for me, right? Black men doing creative things that I wanted to do at a high level within the industry. And I would always reach out to those guys, Joshua and Marcus Troy, and be like, man, I love your work. How can I get started? How can I get into this industry? Like, how can I do what you're doing or some variation of what you're doing? And I remember I had reached out to Marcus Troy a few times about like my ideas and what I wanted to do. And, kept asking him, like, how do I get started? Like, what do I do? What's the play? Give me the blueprint. And there's one thing he said to me that stuck. And it was, he pretty much plainly said, dude, just start. Like, stop thinking about it. Stop overanalyzing. What you want to do, just start. Right? And to me, it was like, he didn't give specifics, but he was like, whatever you want to do, there's steps involved. Take the first step, whether that's creating an LLC, whether that's creating a website, whether that's, or buying a domain. Like, just start. Get the ball rolling. And that stuck with me. So I tell people all the time who come to me now, it's like, man, I want to do this, or, how can I do this, or how can I get involved in this? And I'm like, just start. Whatever that start looks like for you, whether it's LLC in your company, whether it's thinking of a name for your company, whether it's buying a domain for your website, whether it's starting your portfolio, whether it's organizing images, whatever you want to do, there's a starting point, and so just start that process.
Good. Okay, we're coming to our last question here. We like to ask every guest this: who's making waves right now? To you, it could be a brand, it could be a creator, it could be another agency, whatever it is. Is there someone that's really capturing your attention right now?
That is a good question. I think there's so many, I'm trying to, do I go individual? Do I go like brands? Do I go...
Why don't you go individual? Like, even like you were following guys like Joshua Kissy when you started.
Yeah.
Who are those people for you now that you're looking to them?
Yeah. So there's a photographer, and I'm going to photography because that's where I'm rooted. Micaiah Carter, who is, he's big now, but he is doing some really, really cool work. There's also Dante Maurice. I want to say, I don't want to get it wrong, but I think it's A, B, and AD. They have a photography studio, but any cover you've seen in like the last year, they pretty much shot and they are incredible. But I know one of the guys' name is Dante Maurice. Just really inspiring when you talk about photographing black, brown skin. Just gets it. Like, it's just effortless. It's beautiful work. He never misses. The thing I like about him too, or them as a duo, is that they don't just shoot black and brown skin. Like, they've shot lighter skinned folks as well, and they do an excellent job across the board. I think we've gotten into this kind of, not to say a rut, but we've gotten into the habit of like black people only shooting black people for these covers, when we can really light and shoot anything. And we're very versatile when it comes to those things. And so, whereas like this year, it was like, okay, get a black person to shoot a black cover, or a brown person to shoot a brown cover. I think this next iteration is like, no, we can shoot anything. Like, we can light anything. And we're seeing that in film as well. I think from an agency's perspective, Beyond 8 is an agency based out of New York, black woman owned. They're doing some really cool experiential things. They did Pierre Moss, his last show during Fashion Week. That was just epic. So they're doing some really cool things. Joshua Kissy is always doing super cool things. He shot some incredible covers this year as well, but he's branched off into directing as well. Always inspired by him. Timmy Coker, who's a photographer but turned designer, is doing some really cool work in the space of illustration and art. Inari Bree, she did some work for us. Amazing photographer out of Atlanta. Let's see. Those are Those are who I'm watching. A few of who I'm watching right now, who are really inspiring me.
Okay, last thing we want to know is, how can listeners connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on all socials at Master Williams, literally. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Meta Instagram, LinkedIn. That's my handle across the board. So I always tell people I'm an open book. You can email me at gary@creativetheory.agency as well. I try to respond as efficiently as possible, but please forgive me if I don't respond within a day or two. But I will get back to folks as soon as I'm able.
I love it, man. Well, we really appreciate you being with us today.
No, man, I really appreciate this, and I'm sorry, and I really appreciate you all's patience and getting me on. I know it was a little crazy over here, but that's my life. Q4, it's Q4. So best of luck to you all too as you scale and grow. This is really cool. I really appreciate the conversation.
100%. We'll talk soon. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.